the agenda, and item number 1, apologies for absence. I have Councillor Jason Matt.
That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest for any agenda items in this evening's business?
No.
No? Thank you very much
No.
Okay, minutes of the previous meeting of the Town Council on the 18th of May for approval. Could I have a proposer, please?
Yeah, I propose accepted.
Councillor Lucas, thank you. Seconder?
I'll second it, Stuart.
Councillor Trugood, thank you. I'll take that unless there's any dissent. Clark, thank you. And Planning Committee meeting of the 26th of May for information only. Okay. Before I move on to the next agenda item, which is the finance report, I'd just like to record condolences for ex-councillor Harry Rees, his recent death. Harry, I don't know, most of you will be aware that Harry died, and some of you will have been on the council and served with Harry at the same time. Harry was at various times a Shanklin Town Councillor, a County Councillor, and a Ventnor Town Councillor, as well as being a prominent member of the Scrutiny Committee at County Hall. And we don't have time to list the various other committees and organisations that he either chaired, vice chaired, or was a member of. But I just want to put on the record that I regarded Harry as a friend who was always free with his advice. I should caveat that by saying whether you wanted the advice or not didn't really matter. You got it in any case, but generally it was very good advice. He had a big heart, and his devotion to the island was without question, I think. And condolences go to Shirley, his wife, who he married 5 years ago after his first wife died. So those are just the comments that I'd like to make regarding Harry Rees. I don't know if anybody else would like to say something at this point before we move on.
He just was a great character, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, Jim. Yeah, Councillor Trugood, he was a great character. He'll be sadly missed. And of course, you had the shop Paddington's opposite the Central Car Park there for a number of years. His little hole in there with Shirley. It was tremendous and a very good little business. Anyway,
yeah, very clever.
He'll be well remembered.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That. Yeah.
And with that, over to the clerk for the finance report. Thank you, clerk.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just add that Harry was a tremendous help to me. I got regular phone calls 2 or 3 times a week, always good humoured and always well informed. So I'd just like to add to what you've said so well about him, and what a life it was. Back to money. The bank accounts for the Town Council closed at 31st of May at £412 105, £412,000 105, and the accounts were successfully reconciled to that date. Payments during May totaled 57,111, with 4,972 being due to Salisbury Gardens activities. The payments were large because they included the 4 payments you'll have noted to the Isle of Wight Council, which add up to the net rent for the 4 car parks managed by the Town Council of 17,257 in total. The reason for the 4 payments, I think members are aware, there's a £10,000 limit on daily limit on bank transfers. So we agreed with the Isle of Wight Council they would submit separate invoices for each of the 4 car parks, and you can see them on the payments list. The receipts during May, 3,647, with most of that, 3,577, being the Salisbury Gardens rent receipts for the month. The list of payments and receipts against budget lines show that payments were 7,815 under budget, and receipts over the month were £2,900 over budget. I hope I don't need to go into the detail about the under budget payments, because there are two contributors to that in the main. One, of course, is just timing when payments fall due. The other is services that we're not currently providing because of COVID-19. Full lists of both are attached as usual, Chair. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Clark. Any questions for the clerk on the financial report? We'll start with Councillor Watling.
No questions from me, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Milford.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Backhouse-Fry.
Oh, thank you, as usual, David. You're doing a good job.
Thank you. Councillor Logan.
No questions from me.
Councillor Lucas.
No questions from me.
Councillor Cockett.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toogood. We'll take that as a no, I think. Councillor Bond.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I have a proposer?
I'll propose it, Stuart.
Councillor Toogood, and the seconder.
I'm
Councillor
happy to second.
Councillor Cockett. Thank you, Clark. Staying with you, Clark, for the annual accounts, item 5.
Yes, I don't need to say very much about this, apart from the reminder to members that because our turnover is in excess of 200,000, we have to submit annual accounts on an income and expenditure basis and a balance sheet. And those are all attached to this report in line with that requirement. They've been checked by Mike Cox, who provides our payroll function, and I'm confident that they're accurate. So it shows, as you know, a surplus of £16,080 on the year's activity, with expenditure being that much less than income during the period. Pleased to note, of course, that Salisbury Gardens has again returned a very significant surplus of some 15,000. I think that's all I need to say, Chair, for now.
Thank you, Clark. Councillor Watling, anything?
No, nothing to add there, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Milford.
Nothing from me, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Backhouse-Fry.
Well, thank goodness for forward thinking, David.
Councillor Logan.
I'm good, thank you.
Councillor Lucas.
No queries, thank you.
Councillor Cockett.
No queries, but just a comment. It's all right. I find it's always very useful as a councillor to see this document once a year. Provides a very good, simplistic overview of the comings and goings from the finance. So it's a useful document, not only for the legality, also for us, I believe. But thank you, David.
Thank you, Councillor Cockett. Councillor Toogood.
No, nothing from me, thank you. All good. Thank you.
Councillor Bond.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can we have a proposal, please, that we adopt the accounts as published? Councillor Fry, seconded by Councillor Cotter. Thank you very much indeed. I'm still with you, Clark.
Yes, apologies, it's also very boring, Chair, but this is obviously, as you
Never
know,
boring, never boring.
statutory requirements. The annual return, as Alison will confirm, is my least favourite document of the year. So it's always a relief to reach this stage when it's complete and ready for you to adopt and approve as required by the resolutions. The annual return is these days known as the Annual Government and Accountability Return. So the acronym AGAR is frequently used by clerks in commenting on this year's activity by our external auditors who produce the document and check the returns when they come in. It is taken very seriously by the authorities that the Town Council approves the governance report before it considers the accounts. So you are asked to confirm that the Town Council and its officers have behaved properly in governance terms, and that you can, the recommendation asks not just that you approve it, but that unusually this year you authorised the Deputy Mayor to sign Section 1. And the reason for that is that the auditors under government regulations still require what they call wet signatures, which means that we can't use digital ones. And the idea of Morgan going to Thailand to get a signature, while perhaps attracted to him, is not budgeted for. And consequently, I'm asking you, and I have checked this with the auditors, that they're happy to have someone else sign the document. We'll obviously have to make arrangements for signature after the event. So, Chair, the recommendation is before you.
Thank you very much, Clark. The recommendation is that the Town Council approve the annual government statement and authorises the Deputy Mayor to sign Section 1 accordingly. Could I have a proposer, please?
I'll oppose that, Stuart.
Councillor Toogood, seconder.
Yep,
I'll
and
second.
me. I'll second.
Councillor Lucas, thank you very much indeed. I'm still with the clerk.
Yes. Yes, this is the other part of the AGAR, as you know. This is the accounting statements where, happily, I've had the assistance of the internal auditor to do the necessary calculations that lie behind this section of the document. He is happy both with our practice and with the sums that he's signing off on, and the recommendation, as you can see, again, requires you to approve the Deputy Mayor to sign Section 2 in this instance. The section of the report at number 4, additional papers, is just so that you know what we have to do to send with the document itself, but you don't need to approve that. This is just internal accounting, but hopefully you will approve the recommendation as it stands.
Thank you, Clark. So the recommendation is that the Council approves the accounting statements for 2019/20 set out in Section 2, etc. Authorises the Deputy Mayor to sign Section 2 accordingly, and asks the clerk to submit the completed return together with the required additional papers identified in Section 4 in advance of the 31st of July deadline. Could I have a proposer, please?
I'll oppose that, Stuart.
I'll second.
Councillors Toogood and Lucas, thank you very much, Clark.
Are you taking silence as an agreement?
Yes, yeah. Councillor Trigger and Councillor Lucas seconding. And with that, we move on to item number 8 on the agenda, the support for vulnerable residents.
Chair,
We
you
don't
might
have any officers. Sorry, David. Yeah.
sorry, as Tony's not here and Jason's not
Oh,
here, you
and
might,
Jason's not here either.
you might invite Alison to bring you
Yeah,
up to-
sure. Very good idea. Ali?
Yeah, support for vulnerable residents still continues. The numbers are much reduced and far more manageable than they were in the early days. We're still doing collection and deliveries of prescription from Boots, although that has changed somewhat. Originally, we were doing 3 collections and deliveries, one at 10, one at 2, and one at 5. But now we've cancelled the 10 o'clock collection and the 2 o'clock's been put back to 3:30. So there's now collection and delivery at 3:30 and at 5 o'clock with regular volunteers filling those slots. We seem to be able to kind of carry those volunteers through week by week, which is really good. So that's what's happening with Boots. With regards to the post office queue, the post office is now open Monday, Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, 10 till 2 on all those 4 days, with the queues being covered by our volunteers. So, you know, that's encouraging. They're prepared to do that. So that's pretty good. Shopping requests continue, and we get quite a lot of shopping requests coming through from Nava as well. Nava Young, she's our volunteer who's actually coordinating her own list of volunteers who call round and make phone calls to people, vulnerable residents that are self-isolating on them really, and make sure they're okay, and you know, just sort of like I say, make sure they're okay, and if not, then you know, we kind of look into it a bit further. So yeah, it's still continuing. Boots are doing, you know, really well. I think it's working really well, but obviously there's still a need, and we don't know how long for really, you know, but that's pretty much where we're at the moment.
Okay, I think there was some talk, this has been so successful, Alison, that there might be a case for carrying on or something of the like, even when the pandemic has come to a close, to help vulnerable people in the town. It might be something that officers are talking about themselves, and the councils might like to have a think about that going forward. Sorry, my little cat's meowing at me. Councillor Watling, any questions for Alison?
No questions, Chair.
Or indeed anything to add, Colin?
No, all very comprehensive.
Thank you very much. Councillor Milford.
Nothing to add, just an excellent service. Thank you for everyone who's volunteering.
Thank you, Councillor Milford. Councillor Julian Fry, Councillor Backus Fry.
I think you've done very well, Ali, and your team, and it's wonderful to know that Ventnor can step up and all the surrounding areas. And let's carry on, because we need to. Thank you.
Thank you, Delia.
Councillor Logan.
Yes, all good for me. What I would say is that the idea of keeping it on is a very good idea indeed. What this exercise has done is allowed the council to gather a good deal of data as to where the vulnerable people are. So it would be a shame to not continue to use it.
Can I just jump in there, Stuart, for a sec? In actual fact, Tony McCarthy has sent out a questionnaire to all volunteers. We're just waiting for a bit of feedback on that. That's right, David. With regard to that, we're just waiting for. I think 5 questions went out. It's quite a short and sweet questionnaire, just to see about going forward and keeping the volunteers, you know, on a volunteer database, and how we as a town council can do things better. You know, they're doing really well and they're very much guided by us, but what else can we do to help them? So it's kind of, you know, a two-way street really.
Yes. On that, yeah, just a big thank you to Tony and Alison. It's been a real sterling effort.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Lucas.
I was just thinking, now that we've got such a keen volunteer group, maybe there's a need for some early marshalling of the social distancing footpath that they're going to create, just so that people sort of know how to use it and don't abuse it initially. I think that might be good just to launch that, because there will need to be somebody there indicating what's required of people.
Mhm.
Thank you. But Brian, do you happen to know how that's working in Newport, which was the first place to run this system out?
No, I've not been over there to see how it's working. I mean, it'd be interested to know what lessons they've learned from the early days there.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Coppett?
No comment from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Trugood?
No comment for me. I just think Ali and Morgan and Tony's done a fantastic job. Fantastic group. That's just my comment. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jim.
Councillor Bond?
No, all good, thanks, and very good work.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alison, for that very comprehensive outline.
Yeah, very good.
Central car park. I don't know if councillors have managed to see the report that I've got someone. David, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. If I may, just to clarify, if I can, what the issue is at present. Background briefly, the proposal to increase the number of car parking spaces came from Nick Cox some time ago now, and was adopted by the Town Council as a possibility worth exploring, particularly given the current position of the Isle of Wight Council, which is that the installation of the new toilet should not cost them any money in lost revenue, and therefore they are proposing, as you know, an annual charge of 5,880. Their ruling is, as Colin can confirm because he was part of the conversation, I think, with Stuart, is that they will do whatever we want them to, as long as it doesn't cost them any money. And so far as I'm aware, they are still holding to that position. So this proposal to increase the parking spaces seemed to offer the possibility of a solution. The Town Council then agreed, authorised me, in fact, to obtain the necessary professional costs or estimates of for the necessary redesign if that were to be achieved. As you know, I've done that and reported it last time, and it was also considered by the Assets and Services Group at its meeting last week. The quotation has come in at 2,213 from Island Road. It's come in at 2,400 from Andy Stafford, the consultant we used before, and he would have to add travel expenses to that because he's based in York. So the position for the Town Council, as I see it, is to decide whether it's prepared to pay that money and authorise the work to be done, or whether it wishes to go back to the Isle of Wight Council and say that the Town Council is prepared to pay 50% of the cost if they meet the other 50%, or if you decide to do nothing with it. But we do need a decision to stop this continuing to bog us down with time. Thank you, Chair.
Can I chip in here? We considered these sums, I mean, it's 2,400, I think it was, with some extras. But we've also got the cost of the civil engineering work that will be needed to create these places. So if you add the two together, you're talking about a fairly large sum. And I think I made the point at the Assets and Services Group that without the agreement of the Isle of Wight Council that they're going to give us control of this car park, we would be the ones who are putting a lot of investment in for their benefit, because it would be their car park and we're doing the spending, and it didn't seem to stack up to my mind. So unless we have some firm agreements from the Isle of Wight Council in terms of giving us the car or releasing us the car park for our full control and getting benefits from the extra spaces, it didn't seem to be a good idea spending this amount of money on Stafford or the Island Roads. I mean, Island Roads wanted 24 hours work at £50 an hour just to redesign the lining. I mean, you know, it's just ludicrous. And I don't support them spending that much money at this stage without agreements.
Thank
Chair,
you.
can you respond to that? Brian knows what I will say now, so it won't come as a surprise to him. For me, I have in the previous paper, the last meeting, my suggestion was that these are two separate issues. The point of proceeding to spend any money at all on the development is to demonstrate that the required result is achievable, because we don't know that it is. The professional studies that are offered might well say they need fewer car parking spaces. It might also obviously say it can produce more. We don't know. But in terms of the civil engineering work, I've always been clear in both my papers that you're absolutely right. If the Isle of Wight Council are retaining ownership of the car park, then the civil engineering work would entirely be down to them. And because, as you say, they would gain the income from it. And even if at a later stage they transferred management of the car park, any increased income would be part of the rent. So only they stand to gain. I agree with Councillor Lucas entirely. From the civil engineering works, I think both parties may have something to gain from finding out if it's workable or not. I promise to say nothing else after that. Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, Carl. And of course, another aspect of this which hasn't been highlighted and couldn't have been before is the fact that we are going to lose the high street car parking in any case in the next week or so. And it'll be interesting to see what burdens that places in the central car park, if people will actually go to the central car park when they can't obviously park on the high street. Okay, we go around the table. Councillor Watling.
I agree with Councillor Lucas. It's not our asset. We shouldn't be spending money on it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll come to you.
Don't spend money.
I'll come to you. Councillor Milford.
A bit perplexed. I think if the Isle of Wight Council won't even pay like towards a £2,000, survey outline plan, they're certainly not going to pay for the civil engineering work. So aren't we just spending money on, getting to a stage where we've got an idea of what needs to happen, and then they just turn around and say, well, we're not going to spend all the money on the works anyway.
Yeah, Councillor Logan.
I tend to agree with Councillor Milford. Without sort of guarantees of obtaining assets, I think we're throwing money. We could just be throwing money to the council for a very little return.
Thank you. Councillor Cockett.
Yes, well, everyone's pretty much said what I was considering to say myself in the notes that I prepared. Did you mention, Stuart, that there'd be a possibility to request a 50% payment, which would go some way to demonstrating a level of seriousness from the Isle of Wight Council? Because if they were prepared to spend 50% of this survey money, then I could support it. But otherwise, I agree with the other councillors. Without guarantees of contribution to construction costs, it's simply not worth it at this time. But I would be interested to see if there was a 50% contribution.
Okay, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Toogood.
I just think we should keep away from it. Shouldn't get involved in it. Full stop. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Jim. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, keep away from it. Yeah,
sorry, Jim. I thought you were finished.
Sorry, it was.
No, carry on.
Yeah,
Carry on.
house. No, no need to. Sorry, I didn't think you heard me. All right, carry on. That's right.
Okay, Councillor Bond.
Yeah, no, I agree with most of the others. I don't think we should get involved.
Sorry, Stephen, did you have your hand up there?
Yes, I did. If I can just come back in, we also have to remember that the prize at the end of this is getting away from the proposed extortionate amount of money that was suggested for the loss of the car parking spaces for the toilets. So we need an absolute cast iron guarantee that money will be saved before we go ahead with anything else. And I don't think that even that is on the table at the moment, is it?
Not as far as I'm aware, no.
I've had an email just today from Barry Cook, who is the senior surveyor who's in charge of this project, and he's just repeating what he said before, and he's asking me on your behalf to respond with whether we're going to cooperate with them on it or not. And I'm grateful to Councillor Cockett for raising it. I understand the way councillors are feeling entirely, and obviously we'll go along with that decision. But the question you need to answer is whether you are prepared to live with the £5,880 per annum charge for the 4 spaces that the toilet will require, because they are quite capable, as you know, of digging in on this. We can, as we will, look to negotiate, but they may not. And so one of the main projects that you have been progressing with our help will be put at risk, or certainly postponed for some considerable time while the negotiations go ahead. So unfortunately, this decision has a linkage to the other. I'm not suggesting you change your views, but that you know what the consequences may well be of the decision you're edging towards. Well, not edging, rushing towards, going towards.
Well, the risk is, I suppose, part that if we ask you to get in touch with the council and say that we're not prepared to pay this money for the survey, then they will insist on the full £5,000 rod in lieu of the car parking spaces they're losing because of the toilet. So what you're suggesting is that it might be a false economy. And I'm only guessing, and Councillor Cockett will correct me if I'm wrong here, your preferred option would be that if councillors were of a mind to refuse to pay or authorise a full payment, then we ask Isle of Wight Council if they were prepared to pay 50%, with Ventnor Town Council paying the other 50%. Am I correct, Councillor Cockett?
Yeah, Chair, what I'm pointing out is I'm not suggesting it really, because it's a reality. As things stand, things may change as they do. That an investment of £1,000, which is 50% level 1,100, or 2,200 even, is a fair investment against a charge of 5,880 for the next 25 years.
Yeah.
Can I? Sorry, can I? We got some figures from the Isle of Wight Council as to what their total revenue was for the, is it 80 spaces or something? I can't remember now.
Yes,
in the car park. So we know whether those 4 spaces are correctly priced, reflecting the revenue that they get from them. Is that correct? I mean, or are they inflating it?
they're inflating it, and I have pointed that out to them in earlier email exchanges. If you divide 5,808, if you divide the number of places by what they get, which is 75 grand a year, doesn't work out at 5,800 for 4 spaces. It's something around 3 grand.
Yeah. Well, I think we ought to offer them that, because it's anything more is extortionate, and they're extortioning parish council when we're putting a toilet up to replace the one that they cancelled and refused to support. And I think morally, and certainly morally, we are absolutely right to pay them a lesser amount.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying, Brian. I agree with where you're coming from. Councillor Coggin, did you want to come back?
No, just to say, I mean, given how the conversation has progressed, the point that I made and the input that David has given, then is there a recommendation here to go back to the Isle of Wight Council and attempt to get this survey done with their cooperation?
You can put that as a proposal, Stephen.
Yeah, I would like to formally propose that. Let's, based upon what David has said, and if David would consider that to be a worthwhile avenue to go down, then I will propose that formally.
So to be clear, you're suggesting the 50%?
Yes, so to go to attempt a partnership at this stage.
Okay. So just to summarise what Councillor Coggin is saying, he's suggesting or proposing that Ventnor Town Council reapproaches the Isle of Wight Council with the offer to cover 50% of the costs and establish the correct rental fee for the lost spaces.
Yes.
Something, the realistic amount, which is something in the region of £3,000.
Yeah, I'll go along with that.
Could we have a seconder for that, then, please?
Second that.
Councillor Toogood.
Yeah.
Anybody against? Any councillors against that?
Yeah, I'm not against it. I just want to know, can we ask or get some feeling for the basic question that if such a survey went ahead, are the council at all likely, are the White Council at all likely to spend the money that's needed, you know, the civil engineering works, the tens of thousands or whatever it would be, are they giving any indication at all that they would be prepared to go ahead under any circumstances?
The ruling, as I understand it, Councillor, from them, is that they will do anything we ask as long as it doesn't cost them any money. And so even the highest cost I've heard estimated for the civil engineering work, if it created 10 additional spaces or 20 additional spaces, the comeback over 25 years would more than offset the cost, I would think. But it depends on the survey and what it tells us.
So, so we have a proposer at the seconder that we should contribute 50% towards the survey costs.
My concern is those survey costs are just half the problem. Okay, that might be 5,000 in total for survey costs. The civil engineering work is the important sum, which you need to add to it, which they needs to be put in front of them as a total package to say, are you willing to go ahead with this, even if it gives you more revenue? Unless we have that, I mean, we're just spending money on an academic exercise to estimate how much the survey would cost.
I mean, that's correct. Saying we know what the survey would cost. What is the unquantifiable thing is the civil engineering costs, which are predicated on the survey reports.
Well, I thought we were going to go ahead and get Crown, what's it, a company called Crown something, to give us a quote, even a budget price, because otherwise, you know, we're only talking about a very, very small part of the whole project.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I don't think we're in a position to take this any further forward then in the present time, because we don't seem to have agreement even about the basics. whether it's about the survey or then the subsequent costs after that.
Yeah, and you have a motion that's proposed and seconded. You will at least need to put it to a vote.
I'll take the vote on that in a minute, but it's just to be clear, we have.
Can I ask, Chair, is this going back to the Isle of Wight Council? Is that councillor to councillor or officer to officer?
Sorry, Councillor Wally, say again.
Is this going back to the Isle of Wight Council to propose paying 50% of their ask? Is that a councillor to councillor discussion or an officer to officer discussion?
Well, I would assume that it's an officer decision at Isle of Wight Council. David, you can advise on that. I would assume it's a council, an officer decision, because it's with Barry's office at the moment, isn't it?
It is with Barry at present. It would be challengeable depending on what the decision is, politically as well, of course. But initially it needs a response to Barry Cook because he's been designated by Chris Ashman to see this project to completion one way or the other.
Mm.
And
Can I say something?
Of course, Kieran.
I don't think this is the time. This is not the time for us to get ourselves involved in these arguments. I totally agree with Brian, but we are in a very difficult, all of us, we're in a very difficult position. And people are not going to just let money out the door. We know that. We do know that, don't we? And it may be in 5 years' time that we find somewhere better to build the new loos. In fact, there might be somewhere better to build them right now. Well, let's not pin all our hopes on that one site, because I reckon we could do something better. Okay, that's all I can say on the matter.
Yeah, but we're not actually discussing toilets at the moment. We're discussing the provision of extra car parking spaces if it's possible.
Yeah, I know. It's all in it. It's all in it. We're not in a position to do any 5-year plans. We don't know what's coming down the road. I've got a horrible feeling that it's not going to be nice, but we do need to look at other ways of looking at this problem. Actually, people like Jim, I think Jim's got a pretty good idea of alternative plans, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea personally. Really look somewhere we don't have to bellyate to them.
Okay, well, we're in danger of talking ourselves around the table here again. We have the proposal and we have the seconder. So I'll go round the table asking.
Sorry.
If I may just very quickly come back in again about the proposal that I've made. The rationale behind it is the fact that the Isle of Wight Council do have the upper hand to the tune of £5,000 a year for rental for the loss of 4 car parking spaces. That £5,000, I mean, that will fly out the door very, very quickly. That is the rationale for the proposal. The concern about the proposal I've made here is that it's going to be a waste of time. They could well just turn around and say 50% no, and then next month we're here discussing it again. So we're not we don't seem to be in a strong position here. And the best case scenario is that we get the survey done and then the works to increase the number of places turns out to be painting some new lines on the road. It's not necessarily a big civil engineering works with demolition left, right and centre and levelling off. There could be a rejiggling of the existing spaces by painting lines. The proposal isn't a great one, but as I see it, it is a way forward.
But why should they charge us 5,800 when we know it should be 3,000? Surely that ought to go to an independent advisor. I mean, it's just robbery, isn't it?
I don't.
You're not, so hang on. Let's not bandy figures around. Let's be clear about what we're talking about here in terms of the survey. Forget about the civil engineering works and everything else. We can worry about that once the survey is done if we agree to go down that route. But just tell councillors the estimate for the survey.
Quiet.
David, did you hear me?
I know, Chair.
Each other.
The survey figures.
What do you say?
The survey figures. How much will the survey cost?
You've got, it's in the papers, Chair. The total cost is 2,213.
Plus those indexing figures at the bottom.
Now that includes everything. That's the bottom line figure.
£2,213.
£347 added to that, so it's £2,500 effectively.
And then we've got Stafford's costs as well, haven't we? Are you planning to put Stafford's survey costs in as well at this stage?
I just think that on the basis of what you're looking at, the Island Roads is the cheaper of the two, and therefore I would recommend, if you go with anything, go with that.
Yeah.
Brian, I never caught what you just said. Sorry.
I would only support that if we paid them £3,000, which is a reasonable figure that anybody else would prove is realistic, rather than the 5,000, because that's just blackmail.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're not. That's not what the proposal is. The proposal is on the survey, not on the whatever the outcome of the negotiation is. The car parking spaces.
Okay, well, I'll vote against it.
I haven't taken the vote yet, Brian.
Well, I'm just telling you in advance, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
We could, of course, build the new loos in the bus station. Next to the library.
We have a proposal before us which has been seconded. Those for Stephen. Are you voting for your own proposal?
Yes.
Thank you. Brian, against?
I vote against it, and I'd like my name put against that as well.
You're on the record, Councillor Lucas. Councillor Logan.
Yes, it's kind of very reserved, but yes.
Councillor Backhouse-Farr.
Sorry, I think there are better ways of going about this. I have to vote against it.
Yes or no?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Milford.
Yes, in favour of this.
Councillor Toogood.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Lucas. I would want something tied up over a rent, those sites, before I agreed on it. They both go together, actually, in my opinion.
Councillor Bond.
Yeah, I'll go yes.
Councillor Watling.
I'm going to vote against that one. Thank you.
Thank you. By my account, it's 4 for the motion and 4 against the motion. Oh, sorry, the cat's just bit me. I don't know whether that's a. Sorry. Oh, that was a bit sore. 4 for the motion and 4 against the motion. The chair uses his casting vote for the motion. That's carried.
Chair, just on the matter of practice, you don't need to use a casting vote because you haven't voted it yet either.
Oh, sorry, I haven't. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay, I don't have to use my casting vote. That's carried 5 to 4. Thank you, councillors.
Okay.
A good debate. Thank you, Chair.
So Boniface Fields, the ongoing saga of St Boniface Fields and the electricity supply thereof.
Chair.
Mark?
Yes, Chair, there are 2 issues here, which are in the paper. I've listed as the lease and the electricity supply. So in fact, can I take the lease first? Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the position we're at is that Paul Hargreaves has now provided a draft of heads of terms. He's the senior surveyor who's dealing with this project. He's been incredibly patient and very helpful. And what he said in the email that accompanied the draft is that he's not looking for you to accept it just yet. He's running it past you so that I can feed back to him initial reactions to how it is. The reason he's able to do this is because the Isle of Wight Council's position is that they will grant to the Town Council a 35-year lease without the right to renew for the whole site. And that's where they're at. The school, such as they're affected by the lease, their position at present, as you know from the correspondence, is that they want a 125-year lease with the right to renew. But the Isle of Wight Council, I have it definitively from both Paul's email and a telephone conversation, that they will not grant that. So the Town Council is in a position where it can move forward with the lease by starting with the heads of terms. And as you may have noted, once the heads of terms are agreed, they will then start, and I don't know how to say this with a straight face, but they will then start the Section 77 process. And for those members who've not previously been involved in these discussions, a Section 77 order from the Department for Education gives the authority to remove the upper field from its current designation as a school sports field. That process, we had been given to believe, started 18 months ago, but apparently it hasn't. It will take 4 months to complete, is what they're telling us now, with the caveat that COVID-19 slows everything down. But from the Town Council's point of view, the first stage is your initial reactions, if any, to the heads of terms. I'll feed that back to Paul Hargreaves. He will then amend it if that's what he's happy to do, and it'll come back to the July meeting for approval. Or you can say you're completely happy with what you've got and we're happy to sign it. That's entirely a choice for you. Thank you, Chair. That's the lease. Let's take that separately because otherwise it gets complicated.
Thanks, Clark, for that explanation. I'm quite exasperated by the whole attitude of some of those St. Catherine's, well, notably Tony Flowers and transigents and the whole thing. It makes you wonder whether he ever wanted this to go ahead. In any case, we've offered various solutions to St. Catherine's between the council. The latest one was that Councillor Watling and I, with the park and other officers, should attend a virtual meeting with the principal and other trustees. We haven't, as far as I'm aware, had a response to that yet, or not. But no doubt, the other councils will have views on that. Councillor Cocker.
So yeah, to deal with the lease element first, I mean, I don't have enough experience here to make a particularly well-judged comment, so I'll have to defer to other members. From me, 35 years is a good length of time, but I'll have to defer to other members' experience and see what they say on the matter.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Lucas.
I was interested to know from Tony Flowers why he wants 125 years, because I mean, 125 years and a renewable lease is basically the same as having a freehold. And I've never known any people awarding grants and things that require such an incredible fixed tenure as that. I think he's just making it up as he goes along. And I'm very much in favour of us pushing ahead with the terms of the lease with the Isle of Wight Council, because I think they'd be more than reasonable. And I think we ought to continue to play hardball with the St Catherine's to the point where they know they're out of line.
Thanks, Councillor Lucas. Maybe Mr. Flower thinks he's going to live forever. Councillor Logan.
I'm tending to agree with Councillor Lucas here. I'm very, very frustrated with both the council and St Catherine's here. It just seems to be impasse after impasse. So I am of the opinion that let's move ahead with the 35-year lease contract.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Backhouse Fry.
Well, knowing Mr. Flowers where I do, I suggest that he thinks it will make a jolly good housing development. He's probably right, but it's not what we want, is it? No.
Thank you. Councillor Milford.
Happy to progress on the lease side, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Toogood.
Yeah, I think we should carry on with the lease. If it goes wrong, we'll be dead in 35 years, won't we? So,
not going to go wrong. Councillor Bond.
Yeah, I agree with Brian. I think Brian's made the point. The long lease doesn't make any sense. It's not in our best interest.
No, thank you. Councillor Watting.
Yeah, I agree with Brian as well.
Thank you. I don't think, do we need to formally record that as a vote? Clark, I think the mood of colleagues is...
I just think that, Chair, the position we're in is that St Catherine's are effectively out of the picture for us with the lease. They're not obviously out of the picture with the question of how we get electricity supply. But we are now, for me, just talking about the lease and whether you are happy or not with the current heads of terms. Now, that's the only question before you as far as I'm concerned. So, Tony Flowers, forget him.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think colleagues are to a man and woman behind that sentiment. We're all content with the heads of terms as they stand. There's no requirement for them to be signed immediately. In any case, the property, the surveyor has made that clear, hasn't he, Clark?
Yes, you can do if you want to, because it would save a month of waiting, but if you're not bothered, that's fine. Or you could ask the Assets and Services Group to look at it in a bit more detail, because I'm not convinced everybody has had the chance to do that. It's attached to the paper, of course.
Well, let's just wrap this up. I make the proposal that we instruct the clerk to tell his counterpart at County Hall that the 35-year heads of terms lease is acceptable to Ventnor Town Council. Could I have a seconder, please?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Toogood. Anybody against that? Thank you, Clark. That's clear.
Yeah. In which case, you can have Tony Flowers back on the agenda.
What about Tony Flowers?
Although he's not, because he, as you know, you are now through me in correspondence with St Catherine's. There have been 2 letters from me, the first of which has had a reply, which is also attached to the paper, in which they say very clearly that if they don't get their 125-year lease, they will withdraw all interest in the site. So the idea that we might be required to provide a sublease to St Catherine's for the games area would then no longer be relevant. And as they're not going to get what they want, they follow through on what they've decided, then that should happen in the near future. The bit that obviously concerns the council in the Chair of Trustees' reply is her closing sentence when she says, "We would of course then arrange in a timely manner for Ventnor Town Council to set up its own electricity supply."
They can do that.
Elizabeth Owen and me crossed, so I hadn't seen hers when I wrote the second one on the 29th of May, which was the one following the last town council meeting, which contains the suggestion that the chair and Colin and I meet with some of their trustees. And that was dated the 29th of May, and there's been as yet no reply.
Thank you, Clark. Sorry, yeah, I'm with Councillor Lucas. I don't see where they get this idea of the 125-year lease, and I also don't see where this idea of big investment came from to secure the fields as a play area. It's the first time that I can recall that this has ever been mentioned at all. And I question what the real purpose of all this has been all along. I really don't understand it at all. From something that they were very anxious, as we understood it, to reach a conclusion on with the town council, they now seem that they're quite happy to walk away from it. What is the true situation here? Okay, Councillor Cocker.
Yeah, difficult to know what to say, isn't it? So it's over 2 weeks now since you sent that message, David, and no response, which is not looking good, is it? Again, as with the previous item, the council seems to be stuck in a bit of a hard place here.
Yeah, Councillor Lucas.
Well, if we as a council had employed a specialist and surveyor to advise us as to what we should do for our organisation, and Tony Flower is that person, I can understand why the rest of the trustees just agree with him and project what he's asking for. What we need to do is to get through to these people and just persuade them that what he's asking for, A, is unreasonable, and A, is unnecessary. What major development is he planning to put on a all-weather sports pitch that he needs a major investment for? I mean, it's bizarre. It really is bizarre. He's just making it up as he goes along, and we need to get to the trustees and explain this. We're reasonable people. We've got reasonable expertise across this council. We can see that what he's asking for is unreasonable, unacceptable.
Thank you, Councillor. I think you just summed up what was said before, actually, and I think that was the premise. Well, it was the premise of the meeting that we asked the clerk to arrange between us, which hasn't. That request hasn't been replied to yet. Perhaps if somebody from St. Catherine's is viewing the meeting tonight online, they might have an answer for us. Councillor Logan.
I just find the whole thing very frustrating. We seem to, every time, we never seem to make progress with this field, whatever happens. It may be the expensive option, but my thoughts is that we just take control and move ahead with it. And if it costs us £11,000, I really do not like that idea, but somehow we've got to break the impasse.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bathurst-Fry.
Well, you could put solar panels there. You could put windmills up there. You could make a green investment there, which would be an extremely popular thing to do. I mean, as I said, I've had dealings with this gentleman. I should just say, more his hump, which was a colossal boondoggle, how to get loads of money out of a load of archaeologists. Well, it's just not going to work. We've got the answer in our own hands. We could make it into a green energy site, and I'm sure Stephen would go along with that, wouldn't you, Stephen? Oh, as long as you don't make me dig the holes. Yeah, but we could do that.
Councillor Milford.
So nothing further to comment really, Chair. I'm just very frustrated that we've still not resolved the electricity situation, but I would be reluctant to spend 10 or 11,000 myself personally.
Okay, Councillor Toogood.
Well, I know Tony Flowers, I do. I think we should try to get a meeting with the trustees because he's just a bully, an arrogant bully.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Councillor Bond.
Nothing to add. Nothing to add, Chair.
Councillor Watling.
Nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Clark, you want to come back in?
Yes, Chair, I do. But both now and if the meeting does take place, it's really important that you acknowledge, we acknowledge, that that's entirely their business. They're entitled to employ Tony Flower. As you know, he's also a member of the trustees himself. What their plans may or may not be are none of our business. Our business is securing the continuing electricity supply from their fields. And it's really important, if there are more discussions, that that's the basis we start from. If we start from saying, what on earth is Tony Flower up to, it'll just explode and nobody will gain anything. So let's focus on the fact that that connection is worth 11 grand to us. And there's no earthly reason why they shouldn't leave it in place. It doesn't cost them anything. They're not required to do anything with it. The logic has always been clearly on the town council's side. At present, you haven't had the opportunity to put that directly to the trustees, and it would be good if you could do that. But please let's stop talking about their business and how they do it. What their plans aren't going to come to anything anyway. And in any case, they're entitled as an independent organisation who are doing a very good job to make what plans they want.
I think Tony Flower came up with this idea of threatening to cut off our electricity because he thought we had big leverage with the Isle of Wight Council. And we, David, has spent a lot of time negotiating and has got 25 years turned into 35 years and has got a very good deal for the town council. And the end of our negotiation has been reached, but they don't seem to realise that. They seem to think that by having this leverage on us that we make things happen. Well, we can't. We've reached the end of the negotiation with the Isle of Wight Council and they don't seem to realise that.
Thank you, Brian. Well, I think we should gently remind them that we haven't had a reply to a request for a meeting, Clark, and if it helps, I don't mind approaching the school directly by telephone or whatever, or even a direct email reminding of that fact. But I think as you have started the correspondence, there might be something that you would follow up on, but I'm perfectly happy to put myself forward to talk to any one of them. And then, depending whether they agree to talk to us or not, and if they do agree, the outcome of that meeting, then we can decide as a town council where to take it next. But I think the most important thing is that we've decided on the 35-year lease as being a fair and equitable outcome for the council. So we hold the cards as far as the lease goes in any case. Comments on that?
No, I do fear that we will be in the same position this time next month, at which time we will have to get a bit more decisive. But because if I'm not mistaken, this is we're having a very similar conversation. So the time is coming when we will have to be more decisive, and whether that's following Dave Logan or another route, we'll see. That time will come quite soon, I think. Is there any?
I agree with you, Stephen, but the only thing I would say there is that because of the extenuating circumstances, the pandemic and everything else, there may be reasons why they've not been able to respond. But I would entirely agree with you that 1 month from now is the cut-off time. And we ought to make that clear to them. If they want to walk away, then they walk away, but we ought to make it clear that 1 month from now is we as a council will wrap it up ourselves. Does anybody disagree with that notion?
No.
Okay. Clark, did you get that?
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you. All right. Back to you, David, for your report.
You've got a report to receive, Chair. First, I don't think it would detain you for long. The gift to nature report.
Oh, sorry, sorry, I beg your pardon. I've got it flagged up in front of me. Gifts to nature. I was quite intrigued when I saw this, actually. Right.
Does anybody want to comment on this at all? No?
I know quite a bit about the Rue Valley side of it, because during my tenure at the golf club, we had quite a lot of input into that. In fact, it was getting back to one of Julian's things, is one of the main reasons that they wouldn't allow us to put wind turbines up on the golf course is because of the Rue Valley Nature Reserve. But that's history now. Sorry? Oh, I thought Julian was talking to me there. Councillor read the report. Would anybody like to comment on it? Stephen's gone. Brian?
No comment. No.
Councillor Logan?
No comment from me.
Councillor Backhouse Dry?
I think I need some more thinking about it, actually.
You've nothing to add now, no?
Yeah.
Councillor Milford?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Councillor Toogood?
No, nothing to add, thank you.
Councillor Poppy, you're back. Oh, what a lovely picture.
He's got a baby and I've got Labradors living at my house. Oh no.
There you go. Here she is.
There we see her, beautiful.
Say hello.
I've come to you about the gifts of nature, Councillor Poppy. Do you have anything to add or say?
No, I don't. No, I've read the report and I'm very glad for it. I just wish the topography was a little bit more favourable in Ventnor, so that people could access these sites a bit easier. But that's one thing. We have beautiful hills, but they're pretty tough to get up, aren't they?
Actually, you'd be very pleasantly surprised that a lot of people go up there. There are a lot of people, a lot of walkers. It is quite surprising. Did I come to you, Councillor Toogood, or not?
No, I've got nothing to add. Yeah,
Thank you, Councillor Bond.
No, nothing to add, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Watling.
Nothing to add, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Clark.
Is that an invitation to do the town clerk?
Sorry, I completely missed that.
I don't
Shall I
know.
do the town clerk's report now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Usual collection of bits and pieces. We have some very important. The first one, as you are aware, it involves the potential closure of the Ventnor Food Bank, because the Isle of Wight wide food bank, which operates the Ventnor one, has decided finally, after several months of discussing it, to close the Ventnor one from the 3rd of June. Happily, there's again another group of volunteers who are very keen to keep it running, and Tony McCarthy is supporting that. So they're looking at setting up their own food bank as a structured organisation, yet to be decided which framework that is. But they've had 2 meetings already, and they're very active, and they've been in contact with the Isle of Wight wide one, to reach agreement about sources of food and equipment and how the vouchers are to be distributed and so on. So that's a work in progress, but it's very positive at present. The replacement of the steps by Island Roads down from Dudley Road car park have been widely welcomed by people. Toilets reopening, thanks to our maintenance manager and his willingness to become a temporary toilet cleaner, along with Kevin, and support from Nick Cox on the health and safety requirements within the toilets, opened successfully as planned and have operated well with no concerns at present that have come our way. So all is good news there. We've had a lot of appreciation of them being opened and from all sorts of people. Hampshire Association of Local Councils, that meeting in fact took place this morning with them and with the other town and parish councils in the island, the other 5 besides us, who are in membership of HELP and not IWELP. This was, as you can see, to decide on a representative on the Isle of Wight Council Scrutiny Committee, because Dave Stewart, the Isle of Wight Council leader, has agreed that that's a sensible move, given the representation of 6 of the island's councils within HELP. So that's proceeding well. Working groups met as usual. Social distancing in the town centre. Nick and I met with someone called Natasha Dix, whom I believe Councillor Fry knows quite well, and her Director of Neighbourhood Services, Director of Neighbourhoods, Colin Rowlands, to discuss what they were planning for Ventnor. And Stuart and I and Nick joined the meeting, the open meeting that Dave Stewart had with town and parish councils last week. So the range of temporary changes have been proposed. They will be firmed up and reported back to us before they're put in place. That's it, Chair. I'm done.
Good.
Thank you. As the clerk has just indicated, I attended the virtual meeting on the social distancing. It's very interesting that what Ventnor's been talking about for weeks and months now, the Isle of Wight Council, supported by the government, has decided to do without any consultation, either beforehand or after. And the effect will be that the barriers will be put up within the next couple of weeks, and they're huge. I don't know if you've seen the ones that are in Newport, but I think Councillor Lucas alluded to the fact that they might be knocked about, but I don't think these are going to be knocked about by anybody. The bus stop's going to be removed from outside routes as part of that, and these white spots or dots or whatever they call them, they look like dinner plates to me, are going to be put on the pavement at 2 metre intervals. So it's going to be very interesting how the traders and the community alike are going to respond to that, what they think about it, and whether it will have any long-term effect on their thinking going forward. Councillor Coppell.
Oh, they've already been on social media. We had a bunch of crooks. Yeah,
Sorry,
the initial reaction, word's out now, and it's on social media, and we are a bunch of crooks. And so on.
Who is a bunch of crooks?
Us. We're lining our pockets. That was like, let's go. This is all.
Well, it's a town council of councillors in general.
Something to go on and actually explain how town councils work, but but it's kicking off slightly with it as the word comes out.
Well, we as a town council can't be blamed for that quite yet.
Can I just say something? I will have to absent myself from this. Natasha is actually my daughter. She's worked her socks off morning, noon and night. This is a government thing. It's nothing to do with us or the big council. This is something that we've been asked to do. And if you want to be safe, that's what it's about. Okay? No one is out to get anyone. And it's not a terrible plan. It's to keep us safe. And that's all I can say. But if you want to be safe, please do as you're asked. You know?
Well, I think to back up what you're saying there, that was one of the main points that came out of the meeting that Councillor Dave Stewart, the leader of the council, said. He says you can't understand these people who are bickering at the moment because, as far as he's concerned, it's a purely safety measure, and it has been funded in full by the government. You're absolutely right. It came as an instruction. It's not a request. It came as an instruction rather than as Dominic Cummings was told not to go to Durham. But yes, that's another story. Councillor Cockett.
My daughter has written, see, this morning when she got into work at 7 o'clock, she had 400 horrible messages, horrible messages from various mad people on the Isle of Wight who obviously don't believe that, you know, looking after your health and other people's health is important. But it is. The only reason that we are comparatively safe is that many of us have gone out of our way to look after each other. What is the point of us looking after each other if you're not going to, you know, just think what you're doing? This weekend, my village is full of second homers, and the worst lot have moved in next door to the post office, where there's a huge queue of people using St Lawrence post office instead of Ventnor, and were sort of lying in the hedge because they can't actually get 2 meters from this second homer before they get into the post office. Where is the sense in that? We've all got to do it. We don't like it. I've been locked up for months. Some people would say it's a good idea. There you go. But no, seriously, we've got to be serious. Really, I'm not joking. I am not joking. And we've
anybody would tell you to be better off behind doors, Gillian.
Yeah, and I've lost quite a few friends in the last 3 months. No, let's not do this. Let's just do what we're asked to do. There's not much, is it? I mean, we could be living in, I don't know, wherever. Well, I mean, you're living in Thailand. I think they got away pretty well out of it. But we could be living in Africa where everybody dies. We are being, you know, we are being looked after, but we have to do our own bit. And I can't take part in any more of these conversations that involve Natasha, David. Okay, because I have to.
Well, you did pretty well for not being involved there, really, and I have to say.
Well, yeah, I can't help it. But I'm very passionate about the island and the people who live here. It's important to me. That's why I do this. Otherwise, I wouldn't care less. But I do. I do care very much.
Well, I very much enjoyed the presentation at the meeting the other day. Right. Hold your peace then, Stephen Cockett, Councillor Cockett.
Okay, nothing from me. Well, one quick question. Shore Road toilets, are they also reopening, or is that a different situation because of the voluntary clean-up?
Councillor, the answer to that is no, we're not proposing to open that because we don't want to put volunteers in the position of dressing up in PPE.
Yes,
so,
okay.
Had no complaints about Shore Roads being closed, nor any demand for it to be open. So if things change, we'll come back to you with it. But at present, they're closed.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to fulfil the picture. Okay, thank you. There's no other comment from me.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas.
Is this general comments now? Is it? Are we under any business?
On the clerk's report.
No, we don't do any business.
I wanted to raise.
There's no any other business agenda.
Are we on any other business? I'm not.
We do not
are
do
we?
any other business. There's no any other business on the agenda.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, I'd like to create one then. Can I ask the clerk about this code of practice that's come out from COVID? I started to read it, but I lost the will to live as I was going through it. Did you notice anything which we should, as a council, object to, or will be onerous on us as councillors?
Thank you, Chair. It looks fine to me, but I will give it a fuller read this week. And
Well, I haven't read, I'm like you, Councillor Lucas, I haven't read it either.
the consultation is open till August, so with plenty of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Logan.
I'm good, nothing from me.
Councillor Milford on the clerk's report.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the new successor food bank body that has some links with Baby Box, which some of you will know that I have an involvement in. So this is a very tenuous link to that new body that's taking over from the existing food bank. But I'm pleased to say that I think the town council's making a very positive contribution and relationship to the new food bank people, and thank you all for that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Toogood.
Nothing for me, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Bond.
Nothing from me, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Watling.
Is there a way that in all the negativity in the COVID changes to the high street, we can collect some positive noises as well? Can we get some survey data from people that enjoy their extra freedom of manoeuvre, some disabled people that find it easier to move about, some elderly people? Because otherwise all we get is one side of the argument again. So I'd like to see if there's a way we can collect some positive.
I don't see any reason why, if somebody wanted to volunteer to gather that information, and that they can't do it. Personally. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Well, I did suggest that maybe the councillors and maybe the volunteers could start the process off by marshalling and introducing the subject to people who were puzzled by what was going on, and perhaps they can pick up some anecdotal evidence as to whether it's popular or what there's a problem with it.
There may be an answer to it. Absolutely. Paul, anything else? Well, getting back to Councillor Milford's point about the food bank, I have to reiterate what you said there, Stephen. I think it's, once again, thank Tony and people, including your wife. I know you had an interest there, obviously, her being your wife, and Marcin and the others who are running the baby box. I think it's great that I just can't understand why the Isle of Wight food bank as a whole decided to close Ventnor just like that, but it's a decision they've made. But I think Tony and the volunteers, including the ladies from the baby box, will be applauded in their intention to keep the Ventnor food bank open. I think it's a great incentive. And shame on that way. They may have good reasons, but I, for one, don't understand what the good reasons are. But it seems to be lost on me. There we have it. Okay, thank you very much, one and all. It's now 2:30 in the morning, Thailand time. I bid you all a very fond good night.
Fresh shirt. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.